Okay, housekeeping pretty much out of the way with the subscribe and the like and all that jazz. So we're just going to jump right into this episode's call out. So we're calling out Mortal Kombat. This has to do with the statements made by producer Todd Garner. I am not calling out producer Todd Garner, so don't get it twisted. I think that Todd Garner made a questionable choice of words, but I don't think you should hold it against him or the entire freaking production of the movie. What the heck am I talking about? Well, Todd Garner did an interview, and I'm going to read this. There's going to be a bit of reading because this has to do with quotes that Todd made in interviews. So I'm going to try and read a little bit more than has made it into the news recently. And depending on what news outlets you follow, kind of depends on which version of this you've heard. Either Todd Garner is a horrible racist and he hates white people even though he's a white person, or it's just he's championing Asian folk and is focusing on the Asian elements of the Mortal Kombat story. Both of which are not entirely true. Todd did say some things that line up, the vocabulary lines up with the way people are talking in the social norms right now, but he's not necessarily... I don't think anything what he said is negative towards white people. I also don't think anything what he said is necessarily like exalting Asian people. He's just talking about he's talking about a property, an IP that has a strong Asian influence because of the imagery and because of the way. I mean, honestly, whatever. We're gonna get into it. So there's some stuff. So Todd Garner did an interview with Inverse. This was the first of two interviews. So I'm going to read again. I'm going to read a lot real quick. So the quote, the interview. This is the end of the interview, and it starts. Lastly, one more problem Garner and his team had was the unsavory idea of a white character, parentheses, like Johnny Cage, close parentheses, being the hero who saves everyone. Tan is mixed race Chinese British. So this is referring to the creation of Cole Young for the movie, who played by Louis Tan. In Mortal Kombat lore, Johnny Cage is a Hollywood star who enters the tournament to prove he isn't a pampered, spoiled A-lister. While Cage is rarely the capital H hero in any given Mortal Kombat game, he is always somewhere near the center, bringing levity to series stakes. Gardner didn't confirm the precise whereabouts of Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat. The name came up a few times during the interview, but his absence thus far suggests the filmmakers are trying something different. So there's a little bit to unpack there, but we're just going to keep going with this quote. Garner didn't confirm... Oh, wait, we already did that part. This is the quote from Garner. I feel like if I was getting to make a movie with a diverse cast, it felt weird to have a white actor, literally Johnny Cage, be the hero of the story, Garner says. Adding that these discussions took place at the start of the movie's pre-production nearly 7 years ago, quote, way before Black Lives Matter, end quote, and other pushes for diversity across industries, including Hollywood. So there's a little bit to unpack there. And then the quote continues by saying, or the interview, the piece in Inverse, I guess, continues by saying, but just because people's favorite characters aren't in Mortal Kombat doesn't mean they won't appear on screen. Quote, we don't want to disappoint the fans, Garner says. That being said, there's no possible way to make a movie where everybody gets what they want, which is a very good way to make a movie. You have to understand you're going to be upsetting people. Anyway, the article continues, but perhaps that's something that can change in the future. Should the film land with authority, paving the way for a Mortal Kombat universe. And before you start joking about Sonya Vision, just know Gardner is one step ahead. Quote, I would make WandaVision for Liu Kang and Kung Lao, he says. I would do a Stryker movie, I would do a Sonya and Jax movie, and make it like Black Hawk Down. I'm not trying to fight fans. There's legitimate reasons for everything we did. Okay, so at the top of this, where they said that Johnny Cage is rarely capital H hero in any given Mortal Kombat game, that's not entirely true. In Mortal Kombat 9 rather, he is literally capital H hero. So that is kind of what it is. Up until Mortal Kombat 9, so you have 8 games, not including side games, that focus on the fact that Liu Kang is the hero of the story. Every game up until 9, and even 2/3 of Mortal Kombat 9, have Liu Kang as the central protagonist, as the only main protagonist. Everybody else is kind of second fiddle, including Raiden to a large extent. So, like, yes and no, like, Johnny Cage becomes the champion of the Elder Gods, but he's never, they are correct in that he's never been the focus of the story. He's always been the levity point of the story until he becomes a little bit serious towards the beginning of X and throughout the story of X and 11. But that's 2 out of 11 games that have any kind of exceptional focus on this character. So yes, they are correct in that he's not usually the focus, but he is very literally the champion of the Elder Gods because he is the one who wins the tournament or defeats Shao Kahn, as according to the story at the end. So there's the one thing. The next thing is that the quote from Gardner, from Todd Garner, is that, oh, it felt like we were getting to make a movie with a diverse cast. It felt very weird to have a white actor, literally Johnny Cage, be the hero of the story. So the fact that he doesn't understand where Johnny Cage fits in the lore has me a little bit worried, not gonna lie. But he's also not the director. He's also not the writer, the screenwriter. So, like, I don't expect a suit to understand the intricacies of Mortal Kombat lore. So there's that. But the thing that really gives me hope is the last quote says that there's legitimate reasons why we did everything, because they literally sat down and planned this all out. I understand, and I'm totally can get behind the idea of Cole Young being the entry point for people who are not mega fans for the series. That totally makes sense. I don't see anything in here. Yes, he does call out the fact that Johnny Cage is white, and yes, he probably could have used better vocabulary. Does that mean Johnny Cage was pulled from the story because he was white? No. So who am I calling out with this? Well, I'm calling out OAN because they're the ones that are kind of fueling this fire. OAN, if you don't know, is like if Fox News was even more conservative. So there you go. So I'm calling out OAN, I'm calling out the quartering, I'm calling out bounding into comics. Like, that is not what this guy said. Very literally, at the end of this, the very last bits of this are him talking about all of the other things he wants to do with this property. He wants to do something that focuses on Sonya. He wants to do something that focuses, and then we're going to get into the next interview where he says very seriously that he wants to make Johnny Cage a big part of the story. It just didn't work with this first movie because the first movie, you have to... Who's bigger in Mortal Kombat? I'm going to rephrase the question. Who's bigger in Mortal Kombat? Scorpion and Sub-Zero or Johnny Cage? And from all accounts, everything that we're seeing, Scorpion and Sub-Zero are by and large, if not the main, then very close to the main focus of this first movie. So if you have an hour and a half that you have to tell a story and you have to focus on one of the most rich video game backstories for a character in a fighting game ever, namely Scorpion and Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage isn't going to fit in there. And if you already, and it looks like what they're using Kano for is some of that levity. So they have to have Kano have his heel turn effectively, and then they can introduce Johnny Cage to be on the good guys team once we know that Kano really is a bad guy in this universe. So there's a lot there. All right, so the next interview that we have to read, or the next piece, is from comicbook.com, and a bunch of other places were at this press event, but comicbook.com seems to be the one that more people are quoting, even vicariously. Like the Bounding into Comics piece that they wrote about this was quoting a different news outlet, but when I went to that source was quoting comicbook.com. So I went to the source of the source. So on comicbook.com, Garner said this: I want to make a sequel, and I've now got Johnny Cage, which hasn't been used in the first one. So the vocabulary here is a little broken. Garner said during a recent press event attended by comicbook.com. So I have a big stick and a carrot, and maybe they'll let me have a Johnny Cage real presence in the second one. Again, vocabulary is really weird in this. And secondarily, when you think about Mortal Kombat, you just think of the patina of the movie. It has a very Asian feel to it, and I early on felt uncomfortable having a white male lead kind of lead the charge in the first movie. Again, the fact that he doesn't understand where Johnny Cage lies in the lore is a little concerning, but only slightly. It just felt Hollywoodish to me, which is weird because he's an actor, which is also weird. Johnny Cage is an actor, which is also weird. I'm clarifying, that's not in the quote. And probably my bias of ... It just feels weird if I'm trying to do something different and diverse and true. Is it a cop-out to all of a sudden have Ryan Reynolds? Not him, but as the lead felt a little disingenuous to me and super easy to bring him in a big, bombastic, fun way in the second one. This quote seems broken, and I've tried to make heads or tails of it as I was writing it out and stuff, but we'll kind of unpack it a little bit. And he deserves that as a character, and I love these characters, so we thought hard about it. So again, he's saying he wants to do something huge with Johnny Cage. You only have so much time in a movie. Yes, I understand. Johnny was in the first game. There's a lot of lore that is now surrounding that roughly that time frame in the game lore, as well as before that time frame in the game lore, and then immediately after that time frame in the game lore. So my assumption is that while we are going to see the tournament, I feel like there's going to be a different way they attack the character of Johnny Cage. Now, I don't feel like this is necessarily tied directly to the fact that he's white. Now, the people that are trying to call racism against white people are going to start throwing at me, well, the Twitter conversations that Todd Garner is having with fans kind of implies that it is because he was white, and kind of implies X, Y, and Z. Well, I don't see that either. There was a very specific point in time where Garner said, the reason I used the vocabulary, I mean, I'm paraphrasing this because I didn't write this down or save it or whatever. The reason that I used the vocabulary I did in those interviews is because we had focus groups, and those focus groups tended to react more positively when I used said vocabulary. So it's not because I think that it's bad to be white. I just simply said what I said because that is the vocabulary, the vernacular of the time. So misguided, sure, those focus groups probably were not very well diversified when they were bringing people in for them. This is very much what it sounds like. But again, not racist. He's not apologizing for white people. He's not saying white people are bad. He's just saying Johnny Cage's story did not fit in this first movie. He wants to do all of the things with all of the characters. You can't do that in an hour-and-a-half movie. I mean, Zack Snyder couldn't do that in a 4-hour movie for his version of Justice League. That's gotta tell you something. Oh, okay. So I'm calling you out, Quartering, and I'm calling you out, OAN. You guys are and Bounding into Comics. You guys, like, I maybe not OAN so much, but like Quartering and Bounding into Comics, I agree with you guys on a lot of stuff. This is disingenuous. This is trying to stoke flames that aren't there yet. You've got smoke, now let's make a fire, right?